I know I haven't really discussed it much on this channel, but I'm actually a huge music person. As corny as this sounds, I used to make my classmates' Spotify playlists in high school for certain feelings or events, which is something that I still love doing and have considered making videos on in the future, so let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. My personal favorite that I ever made was It's Summer and You're Driving on the Highway and You're Sad and That's Okay, which consisted of such artists as Sufjan Stevens, Casey Musgraves, Julia Jacqueline, and Cautious Clay. Am I aware that this is the plot of a Hulu film that came out a couple of weeks ago? Yes, but you'll just have to trust me. More importantly than a playlist curator, I was the guy in school who everyone came to for recommendations on artists or albums that they would enjoy. Although I got at least 1,000 requests over my 4 years there, and I always did try to vary my responses based on the person who was asking, there was always one artist who managed to sneak their way onto almost every list. And that artist was Jon Bellion. Just in case you stumbled across this video and have no idea who Jon Bellion is, he's a musician and MC from Long Island, New York, who went from producing beats in his dorm room during college to being a bona fide pop star and the writer behind some giant hits from the past couple of years, such as Memories by Maroon 5, Holy by Justin Bieber, and Graveyard by Halsey. I started my personal journey with Jon from the mixtape Welcome to Forever from Logic, an artist I'm embarrassed to admit I liked quite a bit in the early and mid 2010s, as when I heard the intro my interest was piqued, and I decided to look up the featured artist on YouTube. Through this, I stumbled upon a song from his second mixtape, Translation Through Speakers, named Dead Man Walking. Immediately, the song didn't really intrigue me, as it sounded like one of those genres that I hold an immense amount of disdain for, which would be, as Todd in the Shadows previously coined it, white guy with acoustic guitar. That being said, as I started to listen to the lyrics more intently, I started to hear a pretty well done storytelling song about a one-night fling with one's sister's friend. Storytelling is always something that I can appreciate in an artist, considering most of them have their head shoved so far up their butts that it's almost impossible to recount an organic and everyday story in a manner that doesn't come off as condescending. I mean, doing one of those is hard, so Jon doing both of them impressed me. So I decided to continue on through his discography on YouTube, and this was the point where I really started to get on the same wavelength he was putting out there and falling in love with his music. And then I found the Making Of series, which was in its early stages in 2013 when I found it, but it was still something that threw me over the edge of fandom into a state that can only be described as awestruck. The series consists of a behind-the-scenes look into the production of Jon's songs, which sounds pretty basic at first, until the point that you realize that it's not a normal process, it's just him. There aren't any writers, there aren't any producers, and there aren't any instrumentalists most of the time. It's just Jon and a cameraman documenting him. Although the DIY scene wasn't as prominent as it is now, it was still a fixture in music, so this wasn't something that was a groundbreaking practice. But the reason why it blew me away is because I've never, and I genuinely mean never, seen someone feel music the way Jon Bellion feels music. As pretentious as this sounds, it was almost like watching a maestro going to work, controlling every single one of the tools in his hands effortlessly, producing a unique sound that sounded, at least to me, the way mainstream pop music should sound. The way in which he managed to make his voice an instrument through techniques that are so innovative to the point where I don't know what other musicians would think of them is mind-blowing. In one of the earliest making-ofs for the song The Wonder Years, which is the first one that I watched, he uses pill bottles as a sort of maraca to enhance the percussion of the song. That is something that is so simple, yet requires a brain that is able to think completely out of the box. At this point, I was hooked. I went back and listened to his first mixtape, Scattered Thoughts Volume 2, which, even though it was much more raw and less complex, still contained the same magic that I observed from Translation Through Speakers. From that point on, I literally could not stop talking about him to anybody who would listen. Every time someone brought up an up-and-coming artist, I couldn't help but to interject and bring up Jon. And every time that I showed someone his music, they would find themselves just as interested as I was, to the point where some of my exes still thank me for introducing him to them. To this day. At the end of the year, he put out his third mixtape named The Separation, which truly showed me that not only did I put my eggs in the right basket, but it also showed me that he was going to definitely be a star one day. On the project, not only did he go through natural creative progression, but the scale of the songs started to feel bigger and more epic than anything he previously released. In correspondence with that, he also started releasing making-of videos that were twice as long as they had been, delving even deeper into the seamless way that Bellion weaves together every aspect of his tracks. He also continued gaining momentum to the point where he released the project that mattered the most to me, which was his final mixtape, The Definition. Now, although I could say a lot of things about how this was his cleanest and most refined project to date in all aspects, or break down how there is a story to be told to the point where it could potentially be interpreted as a concept album, I'm gonna take this point to transition this video into its second half, which revolves more around my personal connection with the artist. In late 2014, I was going through a lot. It was my first year at college, and I came to the realization that even though I was one of the more popular kids in high school, I was more of an introvert unless I was prodded by others to be an extrovert, which is easy to do in a contained atmosphere with the same couple hundred people for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, but difficult to achieve when the most you spend per week with any given person is 4 hours. By a month in, I had become something of a hermit, spending my days at school and work and my nights inside watching movies and listening to music by myself. Plus, my mother met a man and we had a falling out over him, to put it lightly. I was also in a relationship with my high school sweetheart who wasn't acting too sweet anymore. We barely saw each other, and when we did, I felt like I was always doing something for her, and it was never the same way in reverse. So between all those intertwining factors, I never really felt like I had a place where I could relax and be myself. Well, except for one place. I didn't have a car, and I didn't live on campus. So every single weekday, I would get on the city bus for my commute to school, put on The Definition, and feel okay. Somehow, some way, Jon understood everything that I was going through. Relationship issues, attempting to become a better person, and struggling to succeed were all issues that I had laid out on a platter in front of me. And for the next year, instead of talking to people about my issues, I would vent my frustrations into listening to him sing extensively about all of it on that mixtape, downloaded in my Google Play Music, seeing as his mixtapes weren't on Spotify at the time. I would walk through the sidewalks of my campus and downtown streets of my city, drifting aimlessly from bus to bus with Human blasting in my dollar store earbuds every single morning and night. It was like I was provided my own personal therapeutic experience, over and over and over again, completely free of cost. And in the time in which I listened to that album religiously, I gained the strength and understanding to either mend or cut out every single toxic relationship that I had going on in my life. This is the phase of my life that I dedicated myself to discovering who I am, as it was something that I had never fully put my heart into. This was the year that I fully realized that I didn't want to go into education, and I don't know if I would have gotten here if it wasn't for The Definition. So time moves on, and over the next year or so, we got 3 singles called Woke the Fuck Up, Woodstock, Psychedelic Fiction, and All Time Low. I liked 2 of those songs, and one of them didn't particularly stick with me as much as most of his stuff did, as it seemed a tad overly self-indulgent compared to the more grounded and self-aware nature that he had previously portrayed. And of course, in classic me fashion, the song that I liked the least from one of my favorite artists was the one that pushed them over the top into the mainstream media. All Time Low was a giant hit, going 3 times platinum, and although it was disappointing that one of the other better singles didn't get the recognition that it properly deserved, it just gave me even more opportunities to show his exponentially growing fan base more of his older songs and the making of videos, which I cherished when I was introduced to him, so I knew they would too. Then in 2016, one of the few years of the past decade that I could say that I had myself together pretty solidly, he put out his debut studio album titled The Human Condition. While the definition has been my soothing calm in a troubled time of my life, The Human Condition was my roaring celebration of overcoming everything that had been put in front of me, and surprisingly, the tone of the album seemed to match up perfectly with what I was feeling. Listening to songs like He Is the Same, 80s Films, Maybe I Don't Know, and Guillotine were my metaphorical victory laps. That being said, the thing that cemented Jon as one of my favorite artists of all time is the final song on the album, Hand of God. If the other songs that I mentioned were my victory laps, Hand of God was the eternal bliss felt in the immediate moment after crossing the finish line. It was pure euphoria. To this day, I have listened to a whole lot of music, and my taste has changed a lot and developed into a palette that one could possibly consider pretentious, but I will stand by the fact that Hand of God is one of the best songs that I have ever heard in my life. The first time listening to it while driving on the highway in the middle of a gorgeous summer sunset produced a feeling that, as somebody who does not consider themselves religious whatsoever, was the closest thing to otherworldly as I have gotten. And throughout the next couple of years, whenever I knew that I needed to get out of one of my depressive episodes, I would turn that on, knowing very well that it would work perfectly. As good as I told you all that 2016 was for me, 2017 turned out to be absolutely abysmal. I had just changed majors, which I thought may give me a chance to introduce myself to a whole new group of people and, I don't know, make at least one friend. But it ended up being even more exclusive, and I forgot to factor into the equation how absolutely insufferable art school kids are, so I was back at square one. And for some reason, this was the first year that I decided to live on campus, which I would figure out soon was a horrible decision, leading me to complete isolation other than school and work, as I would go actual weeks without talking to anyone, not even my family. There were only a couple of things that kept me going during that period of time, and one of them was a memory from the summer before everything started to go downhill. I had just moved into my apartment, and while everyone was excited about watching the Mayweather and McGregor fight, I was ecstatic about going to a music festival called Breakaway. While there were a whole lot of artists that I loved that were going to be there, I was most excited to see the man this video is all about. It was also the first time that I was going to be hanging out with my friends the whole summer, as I had put my nose to the grindstone and worked a lot of hours during my 3 months off of college to save up some funds for my future. Although I tried talking myself out of it for the whole week beforehand, I knew that this was a chance that I simply could not pass up. He was the penultimate act of the final day, and we made sure to get there early enough so that we could get to stand on the rail at the very front of the venue. As much as I enjoyed the rest of the acts as the day passed on, I couldn't help but view it as a building crescendo to the climax. And what a climax it was. The show opened with He Is the Same, and you could feel the electricity pulse throughout the crowd as he went Kanye West with a beat pad on stage and Travis Mendes providing backup vocals. All you could hear for miles was yelling and the bass absolutely rocking. He then moved into Jim Morrison, which he himself said was a test he did at every venue to see how many tenured fans were there. And to my surprise, me and my 2 friends who stuck with me on the rail for the whole day were the only ones belting out every single note as if our life depended on it, to the point where all 3 of us swore we saw him look at us and smile, which we confirmed later that night at Denny's. And during that 45-minute set, I swore that I could feel my existence just hang there. A brief moment of becoming connected to an artist in a way that I believe one will never be able to experience otherwise. The vibrations pulsating throughout your body, the slow humming that builds up in your ears from the power of the bass radiating from the stage, signaling an ethereal environment that is equal parts invigorating and hypnotizing. This was the moment that truly connected me to Jon Bellion. After that summer, he hasn't been particularly active on the surface, other than releasing his second studio album, Glory Sound Prep. Beneath the surface, however, he has been plenty busy, starting his own record label named after his slogan, Beautiful Mind Records, featuring on a single brimming right below the top 100, and continuing to write giant hits for giant pop stars. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that after years of watching someone who I would consider a musical savant, I have created a bond to his music that is inseverable. I truly believe that there will never be another musician who will ever make the impact on me like he has. The dedication to his craft, the effort to put out quality art without sacrificing creative control, the imaginarium of endless creativity that roams around in his headspace. These are all things that have inspired me in my creative endeavors for years now. So, if you can extract one piece of information from this video, I hope that it is this right here. Go listen to Jon Bellion right now. Perhaps you'll get a fraction of what I got out of his music. And maybe, just maybe, your life will change forever. Thank you so much for watching. First and foremost, if you liked the video, please subscribe. It would help out the channel a lot. It's free and you can cancel at any time. Secondly, thank you to my producer AJ Ford and my patron Weston Kentucky. If you'd like to join our Patreon, the link is in the description. The link is in the description also for all of my other social media. I hope you guys enjoyed once again. Thank you for all the support on the content, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Goodbye.